This place was a witness to one of the most significant architectural achievements of its time. History has hidden the details of this place from us. We can only guess what happened here. During the 6th century, the Byzantine Emperor Anastasius I built a long wall stretching between two seas to protect one of the richest cities in the world from invaders. Over the centuries, this original and monumental structure has gradually disappeared. Why do we know very little about it now? It is difficult to say when this story really started, as there are traces leading back to very ancient times. The idea of creating linear protective walls dates back to the middle of the 5th century BC in ancient Greece, where a long wall was built between Athens and Piraeus for protection against the attacks from the Persians. Other long walls were built later, when the Balkans became part of the Roman Empire. For this reason, we can say that the history of the Eastern Roman Empire is not only one of separation and decay, but also of intensive fortification and building of defensive linear walls.
And that's how the Roman Empire starts parting itself, for reasons that are internal and linked to its inability of controlling the status quo of the matter, but also for reasons that are linked to what happens at the borders of the Roman Empire. So having said this, one of the most intensive building periods of the Roman Empire, linked to the construction of 4 capitals, new capitals outside of the city of Rome, and the protection of these capitals, begins with the Tetrarchy at the end of the 3rd century. So we have cities like Antioch on the Orontes in southeastern Turkey that become a tetrarchic capital, with most likely major fortifications being erected around the city, but also to the east of it, in order to protect the city from eastern pressures. And it's the beginning of the strengthening of the eastern limes, so the eastern frontier.
It is curious to note that the Emperor Constantine had many options while searching for a suitable location of his new capital. In the area of the Sea of Marmara, there were several places which were appropriate candidates. Heraclea, declining but still the richest. Selymbria, the biggest. Nicomedia, the eastern and most ancient capital from the Tetrarchy time, and the modest town of Byzantium. Constantine chose the latter. The choice of the small town of Byzantium for the new capital of the Eastern Roman Empire triggered a period of intensive fortification in the area. Although one can find traces of fortification dating back to the 7th century BC. When the founder of the new Rome arrived, he did not find a destroyed place. Byzantium was surrounded by walls from the time of the Emperor Septimius Severus. However, the history of these walls is not very simple. Byzantium had to pay a very high toll for supporting the usurping of Niger. After his defeat, Septimius Severus demolished all the walls, so that the city could not protect itself anymore. Probably understanding his mistake in not assessing sufficiently enough the strategic location of Byzantium, Later, Septimius Severus built a new wall, which Constantine found upon his arrival in Byzantium. Desiring to enlarge the capital, the first thing every next emperor would think of was what protection it should have. Two problems appear in this case: protection of the coastal line and the inner part. As for the coastal line, the fortification was made by upgrading over the old walls. It is supposed that the building materials from the old walls were used during the construction of the new inner walls. Clearly, the remains of the walls which we see on the seacoast are a mixture of constructions made by various emperors. In this case, can we expect there are some remains from the inner Severian wall, provided that apparently it was demolished when Constantine extended the city? The recent archaeological studies reveal interesting details.
Uzun süre bir sarnıç duvarı olduğu zannedilen Cağaloğlu'ndaki bir duvar vardır. Oradaki bir lise. Anadolu Meslek Lisesi şu anda. Onun altında bir duvar vardır. Bu antik çağda bizim opus reticulatum dediğimiz teknikte yapılmış ki Roma döneminde çok meşhur bir tekniktir. O duvarın son zamanlarda arkeologlar Septimius Severus'un duvarı olabileceğini söylediler ki ben de aynı kanaatteyim. Ama tabii elimizde %100 bir kaynak yok ama büyük ihtimalle Septimius Severus dönemi şehri orada bitiyordu, nihayet buluyordu. Ve o surlar aşağıya kadar iniyordu. Yani sahile kadar iniyordu. Haliç'te de fener.
When the Emperor Constantine came to his new capital, he started building a new wall, which extended the boundaries of the city almost twice. During the building process, he on his turn removed the inner part of the Severus wall. Today, the remains of the Constantine wall are hidden inside the fortification which we observe in modern Istanbul. Besides, Byzantine sources unambiguously indicate that due to an earthquake in 558 AD, the inner wall was completely destroyed. After all, are there still any remains from what the creator of the new Rome constructed? The archaeological science is optimistic that such findings could be made in the future.
Surları hiç şüphesiz sahil surları içinde parçalar halinde tespit edilebilir gelecekte ya da hemen arkasındaki hatlarda. Ama belki o surun bir hatırası da İstanbul'un içinde yaşıyor. Kara tarafındaki surun bir hatırası Esekapı Mahallesi. Bu Samatya'da Adli Tıp Kurumu'nun yakınında çok ilginç bir mahalle var. Esekapı Mahallesi. Hatta meşhur bir medresesi ve kilisesi de eski bir mescit, daha eski bir Bizans kilisesiydi o. Esekapı Mahallesi ve mescidi de Konstantin surunun bir hatırası olarak kabul edilebilir. Çünkü semtin ortasında böyle bir kapı kavramı, kapı adını taşıyor, sur içinde bir alan. Muhtemelen Konstantin surunun bu bölgeden geçtiği ve Altın Kapı gibi görkemli bir kapının da burada olduğu, dolayısıyla Türkçe isminin de buradan geldiği bazı araştırmacılarca düşünülüyor. Şimdilik bunu ispat etmek durumunda değiliz ama İstanbul'da gelecekte yapılacak çalışmalarda bu antik çağ surları, Bizantiyon'un surları, daha sonra İmparator Konstantinos'un yapmış olduğu yeni sur hatları ve onlarla bağlantılı şeyler tespit edilebilecek, umut ediyorum.
All these facts indicate that a rich history is hidden behind the interesting remains of the fortification of Constantinople. Now, we look at these remains in a new way. It turns out that actually some parts of the wall were built in the course of many centuries, and it is difficult to say exactly to which emperor which part of the wall belongs.